Hey guys, so welcome to the ATP Weekly, and this is actually the first one I think in the history of the show, or at least in my history, the history of my participation on the show, the first one that I'm doing by myself. But we're gonna be fine. I was, as you probably could see in the comments, on the remaining part of the Nick and Miles WTA Weekly. This will be super similar. So first up, we talk about Geneva and Lyon and sort of what happened there. I mean, we're not gonna go into that much detail. I think it's the biggest story today. The biggest story that we have to cover is, of course, the French Open. However, we are just going to start with basically the first, just what happened in Lyon and Geneva. Let's maybe go to Geneva first. That was the big one, right? We covered that on the previous show that like Geneva names. We also said that it wasn't maybe like particularly surprising because, well, Casper Ruud has been playing it, for example, but of course Novak Djokovic was the main star there. And well, he did not win the title. I don't know if that puts him in the French Open contention, but first let's talk about the actual champion, Casper Ruud. I know that he's been getting some criticism as well for basically, well, for playing this event even, and for potentially ruining his French Open chances. I would say let's be cautious with these assessments for a few reasons. I do think that the schedule that Casper has chosen for himself, this clay swing, was very ambitious, starting from Estoril, Monte Carlo, Barcelona, Madrid, Rome, now playing this week as well, basically playing every single possible week, because as a top 10 player, he couldn't play the Challenger 175s, I suppose. But like, yeah, that's a very ambitious schedule. And I'm personally, I wouldn't do it. But he knows his body the best. He's done it before. In 2022, he won Geneva, and then by that point, he also made the finals of the French Open. So it's clear that this is doable. It's clear that he can produce it, I think. And when it comes to his actual run, there were some shaky moments. Sebastian Baez, I'm not gonna go as far as say that he had him on the ropes, but the second set, I mean, Casper wasn't really that good in that match. Then against Wally today, because as you probably know by now, Casper had to play two matches in a day, which even adds to that craziness that, well, this Saturday was for him, and now going to the French, playing on Monday. Well, it's a tight schedule, but it could be worse. Anyway, twice today, and he had to save a match point against Flavio Cobolli. Like it wasn't easy whatsoever. And then basically he manages to, like, 2.5 hours later, maybe, or something along these lines, 2.5 hours maybe, he goes onto the court again. He plays Thomas Mahaj. He actually saves a set point in the opening set. I think this is something that probably won't be remembered, really, that Mahaj had this first set like just won for himself already and didn't take it. But Casper manages to claim the title. And as I said, I just think that he's done it before. I'm not treating this as a massive concern. Basically, I think he's gonna be fine. When it comes to the whole run, yeah, I mean, it was just another one for Casper in Geneva, right? I mean, he's only lost once at the venue to Nicolas Jarry back in 2023, so last year. Otherwise, he's won this title 3 times now, so we do expect it at this stage, I believe. And also, when it comes to sort of the history of the tournament, he's the first ever third time champion there. Two titles, it was him, Vilander, and Wawrinka. So I guess he's kind of like the best player in Geneva history by now, which is impressive. I mean, I don't know if it's particularly something that anyone pays that much attention to, but I think it is worth just bringing it up as something that maybe in the future we'll also be looking at. I mean, it is kind of rare for someone who wants to go super deep at a slam to every single time play that first week, right? But I mean that week before a slam, but he's doing it and he's managing to pull this off on a very regular basis. So I think, he's probably gonna be a contender at Roland Garros again. As for the finalist, Thomas Mahaj, I think that obviously we're going to remember the Djokovic win. And we can also mention Flavio Cobolli here at the same time. They were both going for their first ATP Tour titles today, because, as I said, Cobolli was still in the event. Cobolli, in the end, I think he also scored the biggest win of his career, number 15 Shelton. But of course, the one that Mahaj got, that was like kind of more interesting. I think I've said before on one of these shows that like Mahaj to me on the main tour will be like at his least dangerous on clay and against top quality opposition. But Geneva, as we know, 350 altitude, it actually you can actually feel it. Like it's not just a number, and it is super fast. It definitely suits his early ball striking and just aggressive game more. I think it was still impressive for him to beat Mr. Djokovic, but well, we're gonna get to Novak in a second. But yeah, I mean, you still have to somehow get over the line, right? Against the goat, and that's never easy. He still had to play a few great like back and down the line beauties. That of course is his trademark. That he even uh, gave Novak a lot of trouble with in Dubai 2023 last year. But of course, yeah, there is that asterisk with that win. But he deserves all the credit. Just couldn't take the final despite having some chances. And Koboli as well in the semis. I think both these guys have gotten some great points, great momentum for the French Open. That might be though like not really helping them, right? I mean, jumping from these altitude conditions in Geneva on Saturday to their matches at the French. I don't think either is playing on Sunday, but like yeah, it's gonna be a short turnaround. They have some tough opposition. Maybe we'll talk about this later when we're covering the draw. And it doesn't necessarily mean that they're gonna be like French Open dark horses by now. And that's what I'm trying to say. And we also had that Novak Djokovic guy, yes. And that Novak Djokovic guy, I mean, he's 14-6 for the year, I think, right now, which of course for many, many players would be a phenomenal record. For him, it's kind of like, well, not hideous, maybe, but it is pretty weak. And we don't know what exactly is going on with Novak Djokovic. Of course, in Rome, there was that talk about the possible, in Rome, that talk about the possible concussion that he could have had after the bottle hit. I think by now we should probably, well, I don't think it's the effects of that anymore. But yeah, it was the same tank mode though that he entered against Tabilo and the at the end of the match in Rome, like when he's just rushing between the points, he's just trying to be super quick about it, which isn't really Novak, right? Novak spends 25 seconds, Novak spends 10 seconds bouncing, and that's kind of his style usually when he cares, when he's like really into the match. Whereas against Mahaj, especially set one from 1-4 down, from 4-1 up to 4-6 down, like last game was like straight up tanking. I don't think he's ever going to be like punished for this or anything. Like tanking is generally not punished in tennis whatsoever, but theoretically by the rules it could be. And I think you can define like what he was doing. I don't think you can really define it with any other word than tanking. What does it mean for the French? I still think anytime we are talking about Djokovic right now, we still have that thing that, okay, but he's going to be better at the slam, right? So we still can't really go into that conversation like, is he finished? Is he winning a big title from here? We can't go into that conversation before Roland Garros. But as for this event, I mean, it was just some bizarre play again. I can't honestly say that he was super focused or super motivated in that match against Mahaj, which was a little surprising maybe because earlier he played two very fine matches, it seemed, against, of course, Griekspoor and against Yannick Hanfmann. Didn't get Andy Murray. We didn't get that much from Geneva, unfortunately. The Djokovic-Murray clash again. Hello, Gene. And basically, that's kind of it for Geneva. I think we can leave it here. As I said, I'm going to try to focus maybe more on the French Open later in the show. Not sure how long this one is even going to last because, as I said, it's the first ever single ATP Weekly that I'm aware of. But anyway, let's talk about Lyon as well. Kind of like lesser names, but let's also remember that this is the last year of this event, and we will not see it anymore. And what a finish it is, 2023, Arthur Fils claims the title. 2024, Giovanni Pecci Pericard. There is like a bit of a correlation. I think Pecci Pericard is also from Lyon. They've been juniors more or less at the same time. Pecci Pericard is 2003 born. Arthur Fils is 2024 born. 2004 born. They played in the semifinals of the French Open Juniors in 2021 when we had that famous four Frenchmen lineup with them, Van Asch, and Quenel. And basically, since then, they've also met a few times in the pros. Their careers have kind of been like a little, There's always been like a bit of a comparison between them, even if Fils last year exploded in a way that Pecci Pericard couldn't. But I have to say the growth of the young Frenchman this year, of Giovanni Pecci Pericard, has been just impeccable. I mean, what we had last year was just a massive serve, pretty horrible backhand, not when he has time on it. Like when he was playing on clay, he was actually fine. For a while, he wasn't getting any indoor results, any fast hardcourt results, despite his huge serve. But on clay, his backhand was actually okay. Like he could hit through it with time. But that was still like a bit of a just a serve bot last year, really. That was literally just a serve bot who was getting nowhere near in terms of like consistency of results. He would have a random run here or there. Like he was kind of just Chris Eubanks. And now give me a thing that Chris Eubanks does better than Giovanni Pecci Pericard, because they really have a similar game, I think. The one-hander, which is a huge weakness, but who can hit through it better? Giovanni Pecci Pericard. Who has a better serve? I'm going to say Giovanni Pecci Pericard. Who has a better forehand? Who has a better ball striker in general? Giovanni Pecci Pericard. Definitely more margin on that forehand, right? Chris is just like all power, no spin. Here you can actually like produce some range. You can actually produce some margin. And especially athletically, he's grown so much. I mean, again, last year he was just a bit of a serve bot. And did you see the match today against Echeverry? Like, yeah, exactly, Gene. Pecci Pericard is so dynamic around the court right now. Like, he's actually a very good athlete for his height, which you couldn't really see in 2022, 2023. And right now, today, like, of course, Echeverry tried to play like increasingly safe as the match was coming to a close, and he paid the price for it. But why did he pay the price for it? Because Pecci Pericard can actually like run from corner to corner. He can recover into position very quickly. This is something completely new. Like it's just raised his all-round game to a completely different standard. And it's allowed him to have this breakthrough, because last year this guy was not winning 3 challenger titles in 4 months. Like his results would just be first round, semi, first round, quarter, like, just up and down, like checkers or whatever. But this year he actually has that consistency because he has something to fall back on, right? Even when the weaponry isn't maybe like firing on the day, which rarely happens. But yeah, I mean, sure. And this was a really stunning show. I know that what he did at the end, it is like a little controversial in terms of all the volleys and smashes that he missed. Both players were so nervous; they were just exhibiting in different manners. I think because Echeverry would basically start playing as safe as possible, like even how he saved that match point, right, at 5-6. Like look at how carefully he constructs the point there. To the point where like he kind of risks getting burned by another Pecci Pericard backhand. But yeah, some of the worst volleying misses I've ever seen from Pecci Pericard in that final two games, the tiebreak and the 6-5 one. But he gets it done. He saves the match point with a bomb serve. And yeah, I have to say that the jump that he's made this year has been very surprising to me. Like, of course, he was a potential top 100 prospect for this year, maybe for a Chris Eubanks-ish run at some point of his career. But right now, he's kind of showing that he can do this on a very regular basis. So yeah, it's been impressive. And I do think that this is likely actually to continue. I mean, we'll see how he handles himself like on other courts as well. Grass courts, for example, of course, great for his weapons, but is he actually going to be as good of the baseline on them? That's something that we have to wait and see. The finalist, of course, and you have the wonderful Giovanni Pecci Pericard one-hander on the screen. 2 years ago, I would have said one of the worst shots we have on the Pro Tour. But as we can see, when he has time, when the bounce is higher, like, yeah, he can line into it. And someone said to me actually today during this final that see how he defends on the backhand side. I don't think he was actually defending. Like, I don't think he was actually ever defending, because Echeverry was playing so safe that like the ball still set up for Pecci Pericard. So he was kind of like attacking from the defense with the backhand. And yeah, it worked out amazingly well. Speaking of the finalists, very painful loss for Thomas Martin Echeverry. He's already lost 3 main tour finals. Of course, you would kind of expect him to have a title by now, with his career high, with the French Open quarter, and just sort of, he's where we overall think of what we think of him as a player. But yeah, it's 3 finals now, and unfortunately, all of them have had like a bit of a tiebreak thing to them, tiebreak aspect. In Santiago, he lost the second set tiebreak against Jarry. In Houston, he lost 2 tiebreaks to Tiafoe, and here he loses this tiebreak to Pecci Pericard. So he's 1-4 in the tiebreaks in these 3 finals, and that's kind of how he's been losing them. I think Echeverry will get it at some point, but I do think it's a painful loss. And as Gene says, he has that Roland Garros quarterfinal to defend. It's 165 points now, so he's basically defended like what 40 something percent of it. It's not bad, right? But he could have defended like 67% of it if he won Lyon. And he could have done the Lehechka from earlier in the season when Lehechka had to defend that Australian Open quarter and just won Adelaide, won his maiden title there. When it comes to anyone else in Lyon, I don't think there's that much to talk about really. We had Alexander Bublik again actually wanting to play and like showing a lot of grit, which I think has been a theme for this season. He just lost in the semis to Pecci Pericard in a match where maybe that grit went away for a while. He had that ridiculous game with like what six underarm serves, for example. And yeah, it was a bit of a more Bublikish performance from previous years, I would suggest. Whereas on the other hand, we had Darteri, there was a lot of South American players, of course. Yeah, Bublik making the semis on clay is surprising, but he was actually trying, right? This was a weird event, Lyon, I have to say, and I think on the previous ATP Weekly we said it that like the first few seeds were just very much in doubt. You've got Adrian Manarino who's not winning a clay match this year, probably isn't winning a clay match this year. You've got who was the top seed? I don't even remember by now, but it was someone pretty fragile too. And of course, Alexander Bublik as the second seed. So yeah, it was a bit of a messy event in that sense, but well, eventually we had Echeverry Darderi, which I don't think was surprising at all, and probably that bottom half with Pecci Pericard and Bublik, which was a bigger talking point. Oh yeah, Ugo Humbert, and I think he lost to Dominic Kepfer, right? So again, like someone we don't really expect that much on clay from on clay, but of course he's recently upped his clay game as well. So I guess maybe Humbert wasn't as sort of in that Bublik Manarino group, but he actually ended up losing in the first round, just like Manarino. Well, in the second round as a top four seed with a bye, but in his first match. And I think that probably should lead us to the French Open preview. That is like going to be the main part of the show today. I see that the producer has run away for a while, but when he comes back, I'm sure he will show us the first quarter of the draw, where, as we know, we will find the Geneva semi-finalist. That's not his main result in general. I know that the main result is the 24 Grand Slams. But yeah, the Geneva semi-finalist, Novak Djokovic, the 24-time Grand Slam champion, of course, headlines the field as the top seed. I saw already that Gene in the chat was saying that he still believes in Grand Slam Nole and that he can turn it around here. I personally, I don't know if I do. I did a bracket earlier today. I did not have Novak Djokovic in the final. That's what I can tell you. But I did have him in the semis, I think. So I guess that could kind of suggest that I do believe in him. And mostly I believe in Novak here because even if he's going to be like a little weaker physically, which we saw in Geneva for whatever reason, I mean, we don't really know, the first two rounds are just so good for him. I mean, you've got Herbert, who won this wildcard based on challenger points accumulated earlier in the season, but I mean, he's not good on clay, period. You've got Carballes Baena against Lestien, which I think both are very manageable opponents for Djokovic. I mean, Lestien has been struggling for a while. Carballes Baena, of course, a good grinder, but like, how do you beat Djokovic? And when they played in Australia last year, like, it was actually a pretty obvious match as well for Novak. So I think these first two rounds are like really lined up for him. And with these two rounds, like you could actually imagine him playing himself into form. Of course, you can just imagine Novak coming into this Roland Garros and suddenly being already like so much better. Like it's entirely possible. I think that is something that we have to consider. And for now, I just don't really know if that will happen. But his draw helps a lot. I agree. Then in the third round, he could actually play someone very difficult. And I think the third round is when we're going to learn a lot about Novak this event. Because the third round is Musetti, Sabov Wild. I'm gonna discount Gael Monfils. I'm sorry. If Kren Boogie is in the chat, if Derek is in the chat, some of the resident Gael Monfils fans that we have here on Talking Tennis, I'm sorry to you guys, but I have to discount Gael Monfils given his clay court form this year. However, if we get a Djokovic match against either like a firing Sabov Wild, who demonstrated his upset potential last year at Roland Garros, or we get a Lorenzo Musetti third round with Djokovic, Musetti, of course, led Djokovic at the French by 2 sets a couple of 3 years ago, and that was a much more difficult to beat version of Novak. I want to see that match. I want to see what happens, because this is the match where we'll learn a lot about Novak. Like if he's how he's gonna be able to handle them. Exactly, yeah, exactly that match 3 years ago, when of course Musetti had a bit of a shameful retirement, but for 2 sets he was right up there with Novak. But yeah, like if we get that again, I feel like Musetti may be somewhat like in Monte Carlo this year. Like he's gonna cause some issues to Novak, and we're gonna have see how he sorts them out, which is probably going to tell us quite a lot for the rest of the event. Another good news, I guess, for Novak is that if he beats Musetti, if he beats Sejbov-Wild, the forefront I think is slightly better. I actually have to like pull up maybe the draw on my phone as well, because that will help me out. But I think it's like Tommy Paul, right, as the potential seed for Novak. I don't think Tommy is really a player that is going to trouble him all that much on clay. So I think that's kind of like the story of Novak's draw. The story of Novak's draw is that the third round is the difficult part. But if he gets through that, we kind of believe that he's going to build up for something bigger. Oh yeah, Fran Cerundolo, actually, yeah, if Fran gets there, and I guess he seems to have a pretty good draw, like that's possible. But it's a section where we don't even see like any very strong unseeded players, right? So I believe that's probably going to be like, yeah, if Novak gets through the third round, he probably reaches the quarters. That's kind of my assumption. But yeah, Fran Cerundolo, very fine chance for another Roland Garros run. I'd love to see it. I think the best of 5 format suits him as well, because you can kind of like throw away a set because you're not playing well and it's not that big a deal yet. So maybe that's like my favorite to reach the forefront from here. The second, well, I can't call it a quarter, but like the second half of this quarter is the Casper Ruud one. And I've already touched on Casper, of course, quite a lot here. Obviously, his form is pretty amazing. He's had some rough moments in Geneva, but I still trust him a lot, I think, in the best of 5 format. I know that he's played a ton of tennis, this clay swing, but Madrid and Rome were actually a little slower for him, right? So it's not like he's that that in that sort of trouble, I think, yet. Yeah, exactly. This is the Ruud round 1, 2, or 3. Initially in the first round we had Jakub Menšík here, and a few people have pointed this out to me as like, the matchup that they're most excited about, Ruud against Menšík in the first round. However, instantly I was just thinking, okay, but Menšík hasn't been healthy, it's probably not going to be that good. Yes, and even though Ruud has Davidovich Fokina in the second round here, and that's potentially a problem. I don't know if Vacheron can beat Davidovich Fokina. Maybe. Like, Vacheron is just so tough to rate right now because he hasn't really faced these sort of opponents yet. But even though he has Davidovich Fokina in the second round potentially, Echeverry in the third round potentially, I still trust him to go pretty deep. I have to say that, I just feel like in the best of 5 format, he's going to be dangerous. We've seen him win Geneva and go deep at the French before. So I have quite a lot of confidence in Casper. So the main question maybe at some point would become whether he can actually beat Novak in the quarters. And well, he's done it in Monte Carlo. Would it be tougher at the French? I have to kind of believe for now that if Novak gets to the quarters, it would be tougher. That if Novak gets to the quarters, he's going to be in better shape than he was when they played in the Monte Carlo semis. That's kind of my assumption. I don't really remember what's above, like, if Casper has anything tough in the forefront. I know there's Adriel Manarino there as one of the seeds, and Giulio Zepieri plays him, so this is like a perfect draw for the Italian qualifier to potentially go deep. But yeah, we also have here, oh yeah, Taylor Fritz, actually. Yeah, that's, I guess, a contender, right? We cannot really discount Taylor Fritz. A surprising amount of people, a surprising number of people have told me over the last few days to sort of put Fritz in the category of Zverev, Rublev, Medvedev, Tsitsipas. So the guys who, like, we kind of thought that the game has passed them by, but actually no, because this French Open is so open potentially if the issues of Alcaraz, Djokovic, Sinner persist, that Taylor Fritz should be mentioned among these players. Personally, I don't really buy into Taylor winning this slam. I don't think it's possible, but of course he is capable of a deep run. As you can see, this section is pretty much lined up for him to reach the forefront. And if we get a Ruud Fritz fourth round, I don't think that's a matchup that Casper will be entering with like so much confidence, right? I think that's potentially pretty tough. But yeah, if we get Djokovic, Ruud, Fritz in the quarterfinals, I think that by the time Novak gets the quarters, if he gets through Musetti, Sabov, he's probably going to be fine and beat them. Like that. That's kind of my assumption. So, well, that was the first quarter really, and personally, I think that Djokovic is going to make it. That's who I picked in my bracket earlier today. And well, I have to say that my bracket was not too bold this time, despite this being such an open tournament, right? My bracket just wasn't bold whatsoever. Well, maybe it was bold by the time we made it to the semis, but of course, I'm gonna talk about that a bit later, I guess. I think what starts the second set quarter, and what says Gene says, I can see a scenario where Noah wins a close four setter against Ruud. Okay, yeah, I think both against Ruud and Fritz. I would kind of expect him to maybe lose a set or something like that, but we'll see. Botic Fabio, yeah, that's a pretty funny matchup. I think that winning 3 sets right now, sort of physically from Fonini is tough, but it is a pretty entertaining one. What starts the second quarter is, of course, the big one, the one that everyone left the draw sort of thinking of, Zverev Nadal. I know that there have been some new, like, there's been some info, right, in the past few days circulating that, like, Rafa feels better than before. Rafa is ready. He played a practice with Holger Rune where he apparently looked pretty fine. I have to, well, I'm not feeling as confident as I was in the Zverev victory when I saw the draw initially, but I'm still feeling pretty confident in it. You guys remember that match against Hurkacz Nadal played at Rome? I mean, I know that some Nadal fans probably want to forget that, and Nadal probably wants to forget that as well. But that was also an event where before it actually happened, like Rafa was also talking about like practicing well and like being ready. And then he plays Hurkacz and it's not a match. Like it's just not competitive whatsoever. And I think there's a fair few similarities between the Zverev and the Hurkacz matchup. One of them being the fact that if Rafa won't get back his like ground stroke penetration or however you want to call it, basically if his ground strokes won't be doing the damage, and he once again has to just rely on high topspin tennis IQ, like that's not really something that works against Zverev, I think, because he's so strong on the backhand side. And it's similar to Hurkacz. Like they cover their backhand sides so well. I mean, especially Zverev, who of course has one of the best backhands in the game. Hurkacz probably not too potent offensively, but definitely he covers it well on the backhand side. That like they're really good against lefties in general. And yeah, like if Rafa cannot produce any damage of the ground with his ground strokes, it's going to be a very tough matchup. And the serve advantage is as well huge as it was in Hurkacz Nadal, as it will be in Zverev Nadal. Personally, I think that Zverev is going to win this match. I think that Zverev is going to go pretty deep. Zverev, like the fact that he's in the Novak half as well, I think Zverev really enjoyed this draw. I know what sort of risks peaking Zverev or like expecting him to go deep at a slam. I know what sort of risks go along with it. You know, we've seen it all a billion times before. Like Zverev goes into a slam as like a, let's say a big contender, and then in the second round he plays a useless 5 setter against someone, whoever it is really. We've seen it before. I think it might happen. I mean, he gets Giovanni Pecci Pericard in the second round here potentially. I don't know if Pecci Pericard will win against Goffin, but he already beat him in Antwerp last year. Goffin doesn't seem like he's going to be back to his old self whatsoever. And I think that he might actually cause some issues to Zverev. Is there an argument that maybe Nadal is even less of a threat to Zverev right now than Pecci Pericard? Very interesting idea, very interesting potentially discussion to be had. However, when it comes to Mr. Nadal, I saw a prediction, for example, from someone today who said that, like, had him in the quarters. I don't know. I really don't. I really have no idea. But anyway, I don't buy into it right now. Let's just say that. If he beats Zverev, though, yeah, the discussion is going to start from start to finish. I think that like the discussion is just going to start from scratch, is what I want to say. I think that on the draw show, I said that Zverev has like a 95% of chance to 95% chances to beat Nadal. I have to say I've gotten a little less confident in this the past 2 days, but let's say I'm still 85%. I would be surprised if Rafa takes 2 sets, let's say. And for the crowd to have like that sort of an impact, that kind of implies that the match is going to be close in the first place. And that's where I'm kind of thinking, oh, I mean, does Rafa really get Zverev so nervous this time? Like, do we get into a scenario like Roland Garros 2022 when like Zverev is pretty much outplaying Nadal for large chunks of that match, but cannot take a set? Do we really go into that scenario? Because this time it seems like he might have even like maybe not more chances, but chances that will be more clear to take that set. And yeah, I did pick Zverev to go far this event. He might lose in the second round in 5 sets to Giovanni Pecci Pericard, or really whoever it would be, because it's Zverev. Because we've seen many times that like the issue, why he hasn't won a slam is probably more mental than actually with his game. But well, it is what it is. I don't think Hijikata can beat him or McDonald. Darderi or Griekspoor, that's like pretty tough, right? I think I picked Darderi to make the third round there. I don't think that's necessarily that much of a problem for Zverev eventually, though, in the best of 5 set format. Someone who could be a big problem, and I think there are 2 players here in that Zverev fourth round who are actually quite tough for him. Outplaying, yes, John, like for chunks of that match. I'm not saying for the entire one, but I mean, he could have won both sets and never got injured or something like that. Especially the first one. I mean, it was just so crazy. But anyway, the fourth round for Zverev, so the what's a little lower than this, that's when it could get tricky. And I think there are 2 players there. And I know some of you will probably be like, why are you hyping this guy so much? Just stop. But I think Hamad Medjedovic is surely beating Flavio Cobolli, and I think he's the favorite over Holger Rune. There, I said it. Thank you. Goodbye. That's the end of the show. Anyway, Holger Rune or Hamad Medjedovic. Like, that's a forefront opponent for Alexander Zverev, who I think could push the German. I know with Rune, everyone's going to have like reservations based on his most recent performances. I agree with them. I just think that if he gets to like a match against the top seed, yeah, I could see him firing up. I could see it. And Medjedovic, I think, is a force of nature at the moment once he's back from this injury and from this illness more so. And he seems to be back in good physical shape. He almost beat Medvedev in Rome. He was fantastic in 2 matches in the qualies, but he was especially amazing in that Pui round 1, which was, such a blockbuster. 2 of the players that everyone expected to qualify. Well, maybe Pui a bit less so, but still 2 of the most dangerous players in the qualifying. He was in God mode in that match. And I know that Cobolli has just made the semis in Geneva, had a match point over Ruud, but I mean, you can check out for yourself how big a favorite Hamad Medjedovic is for the bookies as well. I'm actually not on board with that. I don't think he's that much of a favorite, but anyway, I think he is, and I think Medjedovic Rune right now would be a super good match with Hamad potentially to me even having an edge. There's still Khachanov there. There's still Nagal. There's still Kovalik. There's still Giron. I mean, mostly Khachanov. So it's not a guarantee. But I think if Zverev plays Medjedovic or Rune, that was the round where I kind of hesitated. I picked Medjedovic to make the fourth round, and I hesitated there. I was like, can I actually go Medjedovic over Zverev? But I think, that's too much. That's where I decided to draw the line between my own delusion and between what I've been seeing from Medjedovic the last couple of weeks. So basically, yeah, fourth round for Zverev, potentially very tricky. But if I remember correctly, the quarterfinals do look a little better for him. I don't remember who it is right now. I actually pulled up the draw somewhere as well. So, but it has to load now. Yeah, of course. So we have Alex de Minaur and Daniil Medvedev as the potential quarterfinalists. And I have a bit of a problem with Medvedev here. Like, I just think he's pretty vulnerable. Like, I don't think he's necessarily going to have to lose in the first round. But let's imagine this. Kepfer round 1, Monteiro round 2, Navone round 3. Is Daniil really winning all 3 of these matches? I'm not too confident. I know he's had some issues serving, right? He's had these injuries with the arm, like couldn't really practice his serve. Not that important on clay, yes, but we've had some pretty weak performances on at Roland Garros from him over the years. The one against Cilic, where he was just like blown off the court. The one last year against Sabov Wild, where I mean, I guess Sabov Wild played a ridiculous match, but like still, he had everything for himself there, right? I mean, he was just blasting the forehand, and Medvedev had nothing to say. So I think Kepfer is going to be a slog. Like Daniil has to be ready for grinding his ass off in that match. Maybe Kecmanovic is not a threat. I think 2 years ago, Medvedev played a fantastic match against Kecmanovic at the French. But Monteiro, with that form from Madrid and Rome, like probably the most informed qualifier that we have, even taking Medvedev into consideration. I mean, I don't know if he has the explosive ceiling of Hamad. I know probably not, or at least not more than twice a year. But if he gets through Kecmanovic, I would think he's actually got a shot at Medvedev, you know? He's beaten Tsitsipas this year already in Madrid, and he was phenomenal. He also beat Alcaraz in Rio. I, sorry, I love that joke because, of course, Alcaraz got injured on like the second or third point. But yes, technically, Thiago Monteiro has 2 top 10 wins this year. But yeah, Navone in the third round. And I think in my bracket, I picked Navone to beat Daniil Medvedev in the third round. I don't know if it's a hot take. I just think that every single round for Daniil is like kind of spiced, you know? Every single round is pretty tough for him. So I think, I don't know which opponent, but someone might beat him relatively early. That's what I'm saying. And John also said that Medi's not making round 4. And when it comes to that upper part of this section, we had Alex de Minaur, right? And I think we also had Alexander Bublik. So it's clear that this one is a little wild. Anything can happen here. Barrère has beaten Bublik a few times. Of course, we might see Bublik grinding his ass off again. Sure, I don't know. We also have de Minaur against Mikkelsen. I think de Minaur probably wins that, but does he beat Munar? Again, I don't really know. Like, these seeds are very vulnerable, right? So if we have Bublik and de Minaur as the seeds on clay at Roland Garros, that clearly indicates to me that this section can get wild, that this section can be very tricky. I think Jan-Lennard Struff is someone that people are looking at from that part of the draw, and I agree with that. I think I picked Jan-Lennard Struff to make the fourth round or the quarters there. I don't even remember. But I do believe that if Zverev gets through Medvedev or Rune, he probably would beat Navone, Medvedev, who else was there? Struff, yeah, whoever comes out of that section, maybe ADM. Zverev would be the favorite over that. So in short, yes, Alexander Zverev was my semi-finalist in this part of the draw. I think with this we can go to the third quarter, and that actually starts with Mr. Andrei Rublev. So, oh yeah, this is the Rublev Tsitsipas Alcaraz one. It's pretty brutal because Rublev and Tsitsipas, they are in each other's fourth round, right? So we have these 4, 5, however you wanna call it, players who are yet to win the Slam and who kind of have to be looking at this French Open as a big chance. And I'm thinking of Zverev, Rublev, Tsitsipas, and Rud, right? And 2 of them are in the fourth round. 2 of them are projected to meet in the fourth round. So that's brutal for them because that means one of them will be out of the event by then already. That's not ideal, of course. But yeah, you've got Andrei Rublev playing Taro Daniel. I think that's a great draw. Martinez in the second round may be dangerous. Of course, for example, this year in Estoril, like Martinez had a ridiculous clay season in terms of the highlights, but he's not too consistent about it. So I think Rublev will probably make the third round. But that's when he can actually be in trouble, a little bit at least. Again, we have Arnaldi Fils. Who was it last year that like loved this match? I think it was Jane maybe at the US Open. I don't think Jane is today at the chat, but last year at the US Open, Jane loved Arnaldi Fils at the there, and I did too. It was a beautiful 5-setter in the second round. And I think this match is such a highlight again, such a blockbuster in the first round. Maybe someone like Miller or Nardi makes the third round as well. But I think Arnaldi and Fils would be the ones who can actually beat Rublev. And then Tsitsipas on the other part of that section, that's actually a bit easier, I think. Tsitsipas has Vujovic, sure. We've seen Marton be a threat to top players. Actually, his top 10 record is pretty poor, but he's pushed them many times. You've got Altmaier, who eliminated Yannick Sinner last year. But I think Steph is playing just far too well right now. And also Umber, Sonego, Zhang, Vukic. Yeah, I could probably imagine Zhang like peeking out of his mind and beating Tsitsipas, but is it likely to happen? No. So I think out of these two, out of Tsitsipas and Rublev, to me, Tsitsipas is the more likely quarterfinalist and the more likely player who will reach the forefront as well. If Rublev would lose to Arnaldi Fils, I would not be surprised. My quarterfinalist here was Stefanos Tsitsipas. Probably not surprising as he's been in very good form. And lower down, we have the Carlos Alcaraz section. And that's, of course, very tricky because Carlos, well, we have no idea where he is right now, right? I mean, we have no idea how the arm is going to be. I think playing JJ Wolf in the opening round, that's pretty easy. Like, that's just something he's going to win regardless of his arm. Like, that's something that his arm condition will not impact because we saw him in Madrid, right? Like, he couldn't hit through his forehand, but he still beat Shevchenko. He still beat Struff, although it was much tougher than would have been otherwise. Like, he can still beat, let's say, solid quality opposition. Oh, he also beat Sabovit. I was forgetting who was the third player. But yeah, he can beat solid opposition without going through his forehand, like without going for his forehand 100%. But then he runs into Rublev, and you can see that anyone with a super strong baseline game in Madrid, like that was never going to work out. If that happens again, someone like Jack Draper is already dangerous, maybe more dangerous than his third round opponents. However, I don't know. I let's say it's a gut feeling. I just feel like Carlos will be ready. I feel like Carlos will be okay with the arm, and he's gonna make the forefront. Then I think without that much of a hassle, potentially Jack Draper. Who's in his forefront? Again, this is one of these sections where you can see by the seeds that this is a little shaky. You've got Shelton, you've got Auger Aliassime. I would like to see Shelton play Gaston in the second round. I would like to see it because I think they are Gaston, not Shelton play Diallo in the second round. That's what I was trying to say. Shelton is of course playing Gaston in the first round, but Shelton Diallo would be a fun match for me in the second round because I see a lot of similarities in terms of their clay potential, like how they are seemingly about that big serve, and on faster conditions, they are definitely about their weapons, but on clay, like actually their athleticism, their dynamic nature gets more accentuated. Shelton chooses not to use it, though, I have to say. Like recently in Madrid, Rome, he's been choosing not to rely on that, which I think is a big shame. Diallo, however, in the qualifying was actually properly good on clay. I would love to see it, but are these guys a threat? Are these guys a threat to Alcaraz? Probably not. And again, Felix Auger-Aliassime, I actually picked Felix to go pretty deep because, as you can see, this section is just wild. I mean, you've got Shelton, Gaston, Nishikori, Diallo, Purcell, Squire, Nishioka, Auger-Aliassime. Who's beating Felix here? Nishioka already beat him at the French a few years ago, but of course, Nishioka has his own clay issues. He was also sick in Lyon. Squire, I think, can even beat Purcell because Purcell is really poor on clay. Nishikori, we don't think he's going to be fit. Yeah, I think Felix can actually go to the forefront here, but would it mean that he can beat Carlos Alcaraz? If Carlos is fine, probably not. So all in all, I did pick Carlos Alcaraz to make the quarters here. John said that Jamie has gone for Tsitsipas to win the title. I'm assuming that was his quarterfinal, Alcaraz Tsitsipas, and he simply picked Tsitsipas to beat Carlos. I ended up sticking with Carlos. I think Jack Draper is a bit of a threat, but if the arm is ready, he's not that much of a threat to sort of tell me, okay, don't go Carlos. No, definitely not. Then I think as the seventh section leader is Hubert Hurkacz, the eighth seed. He's going to play Mochizuki in the first round, which I think is really nice for him. Moreno Dalboran or Nakashima in the second round. Like, Hurkacz has a pretty nice time here, I think. I think he's going to be okay in this section. He also has Vanash, Shapovalov, Bellucci, Tiafoe. Like, Tiafoe is actually the third round opponent, like the third round seed you wanted to draw right now, right? So I think Hurkacz got it nice here, but is he actually a threat to, like, let's say, make the semis? Probably not. But of course, we've talked about him a lot of times, actually, this clay swing, that he's having such a wonderful, like, solid season. A great continuation of this would be just fourth round or a quarter here. I think the fourth round is super doable. He basically has to, like, not lose to Nakashima for it to happen. Like that's kind of my idea. I think otherwise he's gonna beat everyone else to make the fourth round. I don't know if he would beat his opponents in the fourth round because they are pretty dangerous. And we have Tabilo and Dimitrov as the seeds. I know Dimitrov slowed down a bit on clay. He also never really made a run at the French. I think his best result is the fourth round, right? So he has a decent chance to get that this year. I think Marozhan in the second round, if he was like in slightly better form, I would probably be picking Marozhan over Dimitrov. But again, Fabi's form is just very mediocre this clay swing. Tabilo, though, like I know I've said before that like Tabilo might be a little overrated right now because after Rome, people are just expecting him to do the same and like are thinking that he played some absolutely ridiculous stuff there, given he almost beat Zverev and he beat Djokovic, which I think, there is a slight hyperbole in this. However, with that sort of draw, I think Tabilo, yeah, I mean, if he doesn't lose to Bergs in round one, Bergs being one of the most dangerous qualifiers, but he drew Tabilo, so that's probably too tough. And then let's say against Marozhan or Dimitrov, I think he's the favorite right now. Against Hurkacz, he's probably the favorite right now. Again. So I think I might have picked Alejandro Tabilo to make the quarterfinals in my bracket. I think that's actually what I did. But well, we still have the Hurkacz section. But yeah, lower down we have Tabilo and Dimitrov. Perhaps not too important in the long run because it's still more key whether we think that Yannick will make it. But yeah, I think I actually picked Tabilo. But yeah, we can go down to Yannick now. As basically, there was a comment as well earlier about which injury feels more impactful. I think basically what? Tennis podcast is hyping Medjedovic? No. Medjedovic is beating Kobori and beating Runa. I have to. It has to happen. It has to happen. But anyway, I can't get to that comment. But I think there was like a comparison from John about these two injuries. I think we just don't know. But I guess there is a bit of a difference in that the Carlos injury is just limiting his arm, right? The Sinner one can actually limit his movement as well. But Yannick says that the hip is no longer a concern and it's just now about getting in much shape. If that's true, because of course the players can lie, we don't actually get them, at a lie detector. I think that if that's true, that's probably good for him because this section is beautiful. I mean, Chris Eubanks, I know he pushed Rune last year at Roland Garros, but I don't think he's gonna do it to Sinner, or at least he's not gonna beat him in a best of five scenario. Gasquet, Chorich, like these two just seem completely lost at the moment for different reasons. And you've got Nori, Kotov, Wawrinka, Murray. Like out of these players, I think only Kotov realistically is a player who I think could like peek out of his mind on the day and beat Sinner. He almost did in Madrid, but that was of course the match where Yannick struggled with his hip. So if that's true that Yannick's hip is okay, if he's really just going to be getting back in shape with every single match, I think he's going to be fine for the fourth round here. And the fourth round is where it might get tricky. If you can show the fourth round, the last section that we are yet to discuss. The fourth round has Nicolas Jarry in it for Sinner, and that's kind of the main deal about this. How much do we trust Nicolas Jarry to actually get there is also another question. It was similarly a question the last year's Roland Garros because he won Geneva, and then we were thinking, okay, so like, is it just going to be a typical Jarry one? He loses in the first round here, or is he actually a contender? And I guess he sort of went for the latter. I mean, he lost to Ruud in the fourth round. But here, he has a pretty tricky draw. Like, maybe not the third round. Atmane, Offner, Heide, Baez. I know I might be a little too harsh on Baez sometimes, but I really don't think he can beat Sinner, and I'm not even sure he can beat Jarry. But, like, Mute or Shevchenko in the first two rounds, like, that's something that I could imagine Jarry losing to, mostly because they just know how to make it tricky for him. I mean, Mute beat him in Santiago this year. It was a crazy atmosphere. The Chilean fans were just rampant. And I think this is going to be one of the loudest matches of round one. This is actually tomorrow, right? This isn't one of the stage courts, maybe Simon Mathieu or Susan Lenglen. And I think this is going to be a crazy, crazy match in terms of the atmosphere. And of course, Mute has everything keep the variety high, unload the power of a huge hitting opponent. Or is it just the Jarry confidence from Rome that's more important? Truth be told, I have no idea. I don't think that will be a free set match. You've got Shevchenko as well, who's just a gritty, tough power grinder. Like, yeah, sure, he can probably cause some issues to Jarry. Did I still pick Jarry to the fourth round? Yes. I don't think it's a done deal, though, that he'll get there. And when it comes to the potential Jarry-Sinner match in the fourth round, I know that a lot of people are picking an upset there. Personally, I just couldn't do it. I just couldn't do it. I was like, nah. I mean, I can't really go against Yannick, with how good he's been this year. Like, as long as he's fine physically, he's probably gonna do it. So anyway, I was not bold, as I said, and I went for the top four seeds in the semifinals. I'm sorry, guys. I really feel ashamed of this. Bold Vanch is already on the screen. This time it's bold Damien. Although I did change something in the top four seedings in the women's. But yeah, on the men's, I just couldn't do it because I think as long as Alcaraz and Sinner will be fine physically, they make the semis, plain as that. As long as Djokovic will be fine in the head and physically, he probably makes the semis. Like he was the one I sort of thought of. Like I was thinking maybe Sabovil or Musetti can actually beat him in the third round. Maybe Ruud can beat him in the quarters. But I just couldn't bring myself to it. And I couldn't bring myself to pick Jari over Sinner. Alcaraz, I didn't really ever consider to pick anyone, I think, against him. I was thinking of Draper a second, maybe, but no. I think, again, if Carlos like reaches the fourth round, then that probably, well, actually, no, but let's say he reaches the fourth round in good shape. That probably means he's going to be okay for the rest of the event too. So I just went with the top four seeds. And if you are very interested to hear what the end of my bracket is, well, let me tell you, that's where it gets spicy. So I picked Alexander Zverev over Novak Djokovic. Again, this just seems like a huge opportunity for Zverev. I don't even think the Rome title convinced me that much because I think for the most part he was just like serviceable there. Like he didn't do anything special. It wasn't like anything crazy. But I think for years we've seen that the top game of Zverev can win slams. He's just, well, mentally he doesn't deliver. And given the Djokovic issues of late, given that Djokovic still hasn't, yeah, Jaime Faria, I hope he's watching, along with Coleman Wong. Although Jaime, your performance against Meligeni Alves in the final qualies round, ay ay ay. I mean, it's a shame. I mean, I understand though. You won Oeiras. You know, it was such a ridiculous event with the comeback against Elias Ymer too. Sure, yeah, okay, fine. I mean, you can afford to like drop a match, but it's a shame you weren't able to continue with this incredible form that you built up. But yeah, good luck to you at Wimbledon. Anyway, when it comes to Alexander Zverev beating Djokovic, I just feel like, Djokovic still no titles this year, a few semifinals by now, three of them, but that's the stage where he's been vulnerable. I think it can happen. Like if we got Zverev Djokovic, not even tomorrow, but in 3 or 4 days, I would be considering Zverev the favorite. Maybe I change my opinion by the time they reach the semis. Of course, that's gonna be like whatever days from here, probably around 11, 13, whatever. Yeah, something like that. 13, right? Maybe I change my opinion. Yeah, this is probably the 2021 US Open, right? When Zverev had a phenomenal chance to beat Novak there. And well, he kind of again fumbled, but well, maybe it was actually him and sort of the mental stress of it all that actually led to the Djokovic performance in the final. Of course, this being his chance for the calendar slam. But yeah, I mean, if they play in 3 or 4 days. Matthew, by the way, Djokovic is not making the semis. So who are you picking to eliminate Novak is what I'm interested in right now. If Zverev beats Rafa, he makes the semis. Alcaraz and Sinner will make the semis. So I guess we're on the same page there. But yeah, who is going to eliminate Novak, Matthew, if Djokovic is not making the semis? I'm assuming you're thinking of Ruud, Fritz, Sabor, Vitor, Musetti. Like that's kind of the group. But who is, or which round is Novak losing if you think that he's not making the semis? And also the second semifinal, of course, Alcaraz, Sinner. I went Alcaraz there because like when they played in Indian Wells, we saw that when he had time to adjust, when the conditions were a little slower, he managed to like actually get himself into the match despite Yannick coming out hitting so well and kind of outsmart him. I mean, there was a physical element to it in the third set, but he still kind of outsmarted him, I think, with his tactics, which is not something that Carlos is known for, at least not yet. And I do think that if we get them in full physical shape, Alcaraz is a slight favorite to me over Sinner still on clay, despite Yannick. Well, we didn't see much Yannick on clay this year, but even given his Madrid and Monte Carlo results, runs, performances, I do think that Sinner is probably going to be pretty dangerous on clay anyway. And when it comes to Mr. Oh, to be honest, when he used to Tabilo and Mahach and in the manner that he did, I think they're okay. They're jeopardy for him every round. I mean, not against Herbervo, right? Not against Lestienne or Carbaez Baena. Like, that's still a big difference between Tabilo and Mahach. But of course, the manner, yeah, I agree about that. But I just don't know if we're going to see Novak like throw away the match like this on that sort of stage, right? Probably not. But yeah, I mean, of course, that's a respectable opinion. If you don't think he's going to make it, four players on our screens right now, they cannot all make the semifinals. And I will say even more, they cannot even all make the second round because Zverev or Nadal will be in the second round. But yeah, I picked Alcaraz over Sinner. That was actually pretty clear to me because, as I said, like I think it's a marginal lead, but it is a lead that I have to consider anyway. Like I think it's a 52-48, but I'm very clear in which direction that 52-48 is. For now, I'm also very clear in which that direction that, let's say, 55-45 is with Zverev Djokovic. Again, that might change during the event. And my finalists then were Alcaraz and Zverev. Who did I pick to win the title? I don't even remember. I don't even remember. I would have to check. But I was very hesitant. I don't know who I would pick in that match. I know I was thinking of Alcaraz, but then I just remembered a few losses that he's had to Zverev, Australia, Roland Garros 2022. I don't know. There's something about this matchup and sort of how solid and the combination of the big serve and the defending of Zverev that does get Carlos a little uncomfortable. But I know you can just tell me we've got Madrid, for example, right? When he crushes Zverev two in a row. You say think Indian Wells, but are you talking about Sinner or are you talking about Zverev? Because I don't know if Alcaraz and Zverev have played in Indian Wells. Have they? Well, I don't know. Anyway, I don't remember it for the moment. Oh right, they did. Yeah, yeah. I forgot about that match. Yeah, that was easy. Okay, you're right. You convinced me. Yeah, I actually forgot about that match because it was so like yeah, it just wasn't really a contest. So that's why I just instantly forgot about it. But okay, yeah, I will check it after the show. And if I picked Zverev, I'm gonna change it to Alcaraz. I think I went Alcaraz. I think, but I was very hesitant with that one. But anyway, of course, these are just like some good fun predictions. I know Mario doesn't like them, so that's why he avoided doing the show today. He was just like, "No, Damon is gonna make me do predictions again," and basically, I can't blame him. I also don't really like these predictions, but I think it's a pretty nice way of like going through the draw as well. Sort of telling you what I think is probably most likely. But again, as I said, I wasn't really bold about it. And we still have these questions regarding Alcaraz, Sinner, Djokovic. So if these issues persist, maybe we actually will get that very open slam. For now, it seems like the most open it is for Alexander Zverev out of these other contenders if he beats Rafa, of course, and stuff, right? But yeah, that's kind of what I'm going for. You better pick Carlos, otherwise Vansh would have a few words with you. I don't know who Vansh is going for. I mean, maybe we will learn this on the Iga and Carlos recording today that we're going to do. After this one, I have like a 2 hour, 2.5 hour show in Polish about the Roland Garros draw, and then we do the Iga and Carlos thing, and I also have a lot of other work. So basically, I'm gonna die today. My voice is gonna die for sure. But by the end of the day, I should know what Vansh has picked, or at least what Vansh thinks. So we will see. But I think if I picked Alcaraz, Zverev over Alcaraz, Vansh wouldn't yell at me. Although we did say at the beginning of the clay swing that we are feeling that double at Roland Garros, Iga title, Carlos title. Of course, since then, there's been a fair few injury concerns for sure with Carlos, and that has kind of changed. Well, I don't know if our minds yet, but it has cast a lot of doubt. With Iga, there's still not much doubt, and I think, well, there's only like a fair few, a selected group of players she can lose to. Zverev has character issues, says Brenda, which is very much true. I mean, yeah, even the Australian Open this year, right? We saw that it wasn't his game that led to him losing in that very event. Thank you, Matthew. I feel very useful right now. After the next 2 weeks, I'm gonna die. But anyway, I think this is gonna be it. I actually wasn't planning for it to be like directly an hour, but well, that's happened. That's what happened. And thank you guys. Hope you enjoyed that bit different ATP Weekly show. Of course, very much focused on the French Open preview. The first that I'm aware of that was done by one person, but it didn't really feel that different. I talk a lot in general, so I don't mind that at all. Anyway, I'll see you guys in some other streams, maybe even tomorrow. Join us for all the French Open content. Tomorrow, there's definitely going to be like this late in the day blockbuster stream, which I'm assuming is Mari Wawrinka, right? Given the schedule. And also, there's going to be this like multi combo stream early in the morning, which is going to be like a few people sitting down and watching. Well, one person watching one match, if you get what I mean, one individual match. So yeah, this one on the screen right now, live multi-match watch along. There's Bronzetti Osaka on Chatrier, I think, Umber Sonego on Lenglen. And anyway, there's going to be a lot more talk about even the matches happening on court number 153. So join that. And Nurlan, this is not WTA Weekly. WTA Weekly you can watch on replay, as it was Nick and Miles doing that just 10-15 minutes before I started this one. But anyway, thank you, Nurlan, for showing up in the end. I think especially to you, I must be grateful. Thank you, Matthew, as well, for making me feel useful. And I'll see you guys likely tomorrow and definitely a few times during the whole Roland Garros fortnight as well. Bye.
Ready? Play.
My name is Clara Towson, and I'm a friend of the show.
Boom.
I am Francisca George, and I'm a friend of the show.
Perfect.
Hi, my name is Susan Leemans, and I'm a friend of the show.
Boom. Yeah.
My name is Zainab Sammaz, and I'm a friend of the show.
Boom.
Hey guys, my name is Sasha Vickery, and I'm a friend of the show.
Boom.
Hi, my name is Lloyd Harris, and I'm a friend of the show.
Perfect.
Hi, my name is Jasmine Paolini, and I'm a friend of the show.
Wow, Jasmine, you got it in one time.
If you enjoyed this video, make sure you hit. If you enjoyed this video, make sure you hit that like button. Don't forget to subscribe and click that notification bell so you don't miss out on all things tennis.